Hey, it's Mazzy and welcome back. I want to talk to you about this wonderful diptych that I just got in the mail. I did order these, I did pay for these, and they're not cheap, but these are amongst my favorite records of the year in terms of an issue. They're not reissues per se. Well, I guess they are. They're from Sam Records. Now, most of you who follow me or been following sort of the audiophile world know Sam Records out of France, a one-man operation led by Fred in Paris, and he puts out mostly these great jazz recordings. Mostly, in fact, all of these records are from releases that only originally came out in France. And these particular, this diptych of records were originally on 10 inches in 1951 and 1952. Now, I'll get into the details about these. Now, I ordered these myself. I did pay for them. They're not cheap. They're limited to 450 copies each, and they're sold separately. But of course, when it's a volume 1 and 2, you have to order both of them, right? I have number 109 out of 450, and of this writing, I think about half were sold. But I think these are amongst the best issues of the year in terms of these small press runs. And I'll tell you why. Tell you a little bit about Big Bill Broonzy, not an entire history of him. Please look it up and follow his work. But I think these are fabulous records. These recordings were made in 1951 and 1952, two separate sessions in studio, and they sound fabulous. Now, if you don't know who Big Bill Broonzy is, he's someone that really influenced the folk revival in America and the UK in the 1960s. He heavily toured the United Kingdom, and of course, all those great folk rock bands that started in the mid 60s and beyond, and actually the folk revival in the early 60s as well. Very influential on guitar players like John Renbourn, especially Bert Jansch and the like, and even influential to the Stones and the Beatles and a lot of the rock bands that came out since, Ry Cooder as well. Every guitarist who has roots in blues. I'm a huge fan of country blues. Now, Big Bill Broonzy really kind of started out in country music, and then he went into urban blues, and of course, went full circle back into folk blues and country blues. And these two records are really that. These are folk records. Not unlike Muddy Waters, but Muddy Waters really kind of, that was almost a one-off in terms of the Everyone Loves Folk Singer, and that was marketed to kind of be a part of the folk revival, and very influential artist and Big Bill Broonzy. And it's so great that these recordings happened in the early 50s, a time when after World War II, France was entrenched in the whole jazz scene of all the bebop artists going and hanging out and playing in Europe and in France, Dizzy Gillespie, Charlie Parker, and the blues. There's kind of this yin-yang thing. If you read the liner notes written in here, which I'll show you, the insert sheet that's in these records, it really talks about this whole history of him and what was happening in France at the time. Fred did an amazing job on these. Now, these run about $100 a piece, so they're not cheap and they're limited. Now, I would rather pay for something like this, music that I did have in my collection, than another huge box for $150 of something that I have 5 copies of, or I've heard, year after year after year after year. This is just a beautiful recording and a beautiful record. So let me show you. They come mailed to you in these sort of Japanese tie sleeves individually. Again, there's 2 of them. You don't have to order 2, you can order 1. But of course, if you could order 1, you're gonna up it and might as well get 2, right? You get the same number, at least I did. I'm sure they're sold in pairs for the most part. Now, he puts the album in its separate white sleeve. Inside, there is an inner sleeve, a polyline sleeve. And these are beautiful, beautiful pressings. These are cut, the lacquers were cut by Kevin Gray. I assume these are probably from digital sources, I don't know, but you wouldn't know it. These are amazing recordings and really wonderful records. Now, within the album, there is a sheet. It's the same sheet in both, by the way. Beautiful printed photographs. I assume these are from the sessions in Paris. Look at that. Isn't that stunning? I love this. And the liner notes are written by Sebastian Danchin, and it tells about the whole history, as I said earlier. Here's the track list, and these are recorded on September 20th, 21st, 1951, and then the second one was in Paris, March 12th, 1952. When I talk about the country blues, one of my favorite artists that doesn't get a lot of love, and you can find his records very inexpensively, is Josh White. And you hear the influence, they influence each other. Obviously, Josh White really comes a little later, and he's an artist that was strictly into country blues, an artist who was blacklisted in America during the 1950s, and but made and worked as a activist and an actor as well. But Big Bill Broonzy is someone that you should know and you should have in your collection. Now the cover is on a textured paper, silkscreen. These are really well-made covers. These are reminiscent somewhat of the folkways, Smithsonian folkways later on, those type of covers with the black back. Not exactly, not a wraparound, but a pasted on cover. This one has a green tint. The other volume has a blue tint. I just realized I don't think there's any distinguishing volume 1 or 2 on the covers, aside from the color change. But this is really an amazing diptych of records. I played them twice now all the way through, and I was really happy with the sound of them. Now the originals of these were 10 inches, and they put these on 12 inches. These are 45 RPM, and they just have a really kind of crisp, in the room sound. As I said earlier, there's a certain similarity to Muddy Waters' Folk Singer, that album, which is, I guess that's 1960 though, so that's 10 years, 8 years, 9 years later or something, in terms of the musicality of it. But it's an amazing album, a beautiful record. Now someone will say, you know, I have this blues, I don't need another blues record. Well, it's like saying rock and roll or jazz. There's so many different variations of the blues, and the country blues are one that I don't think get a lot of love, but this is a beautiful diptych of records that Sam Records put out. So for me, this is the perfect sweet spot of blues. This is amongst my favorite blues. It's got an easiness to it. It's got a in your room feel to it, just guitar and vocals. Beautiful Vogue label. Vogue is the French label that originally put this out. The original recordings were done for Disc Vogue, audio restoration by Francois Lejeune. Again, I'm sorry if my French is not up to snuff. It isn't, and I know that. The lacquers were cut by Kevin Gray, of course, at Coherent. Cover illustration by Pierre Merlin. These were what the originals were from, I believe. The insert layout by Jean-Louis Derelec. Photos from Robert Dossenet, the great French photographer. That famous photograph that he took of the girl walking and the guys looking at her as she's walking. Dossenet, one of the great French photographers, and recorded again the sessions in Paris in September 1951. So thanks, Sam Records. Enjoy the music. Mazzy loves you.